Hello traders, welcome back to another episode. My name is Valon and let's dive into what's happening this week. Here are the key stories. We've got the stock futures rise ahead of inflation data, Japanese Nikkei drops, Fed likely to hold interest rates steady, earnings season begins, the reaction of the global markets on the rising yield and dollar strengthening. Starting with our first story, I got the S&P 500 and Nasdaq chart up on the screen for your reference. The US stock futures gained slightly on Monday evening with Dow Jones and S&P 500 and Nasdaq futures rising as investors anticipate key inflation reports this week. The Producer Price Index PPI on Tuesday and the Consumer Price CPI on Wednesday will shape the Federal Reserve's next rate decision. Moving on into our next story, Japan's Nikkei slid by 1.5% as 10-year US Treasury yields hit 14 months high of 4.8%, sparking global market caution. Meanwhile, the S&P 500 and Nasdaq futures went up in early Asian trading session, rising 0.25% and 0.5%. Moving into next topic, the Federal Reserve is expected to keep rates at 4.25/4.5% in January and March, and a strong jobs report and inflation concern complicate the outlook, keeping the market edge. Major banks, including JP Morgan Chase, Citigroup, and Goldman Sachs, report Q4 results this week. As mentioned before, Treasury yields also spiked, driving the dollar to multi-year highs and pressuring tech stocks. The Nasdaq touched a 2-month low, while inflation worries tied to tariffs and fiscal policies under President-elect Trump. As usual, let's look at the economic calendar. Starting the week, we've got the PPI figures, as I mentioned earlier, with the year-on-year sitting forecast at 3.3%, and the previous figure was at 3%. On 15th of January, we've got the inflation figures coming out of the UK, with a forecast being slightly higher, 2.7%, and previous figure was at 2.6% for December. Whereas the core inflation is 3.4%, forecast with 3.5% being the previous figure. Out of the EU zone, we've got the industrial production figures month to month. Coming out of the US, we've got the inflation figures with core inflation rate forecast sitting at 3.3%. The inflation rate year on year is at 2.9%, forecast in comparison to the previous figure, which was at 2.7%. Slight increase on the inflation rate itself, according to the forecast. We also have the PPI figures out of Japan coming out on the 16th of January at 3.6% forecast. There is the retail sales figures out of the US as well later on that day. On the 17th of January, we got the retail sales out of the Great Britain and the building permits, housing starts, and industrial productions out of the US zone. Thank you so much for watching our videos. Please make sure you read our disclaimer. Trading does carry a risk and you need to make your own decisions. Until next week, you have a good day.